Welcome to the Scariest Things podcast, episode 32.
All right.
Your gateway to the tropes and trends of the horror genre. But before we start tonight, Eric, I have an announcement. Be sure to like us on Instagram, on Facebook, on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Blueberry, on Google Play, and just travel on over to the scariestthings.com podcast, 1T, where you will be presented with riches beyond your wildest dreams.
And just as a fun little...
The greatest collection of horror junk you'll ever feast your eyes on.
Total fun shit. But we just passed the 30,000 viewer marker and 42,000 views.
Hell yes.
In 7 months.
Yeah.
Somebody thinks we're doing something right. Actually, it's kind of funny. Hello to all of our new fans out in Bangladesh.
And Yemen.
And in India, there's a promotion that's been going around where we're getting a lot of the of South Asia is now tuning in. So hello,
what up, South Asia? South Asia, Southeast Asia.
It's the subcontinent, right?
The subcontinent, the whole shebang. What up, South Asia, and in general that part of the world. So, but tonight we are not going to do an hour-long promotion about why the scariestthings.com podcast and the website is the best thing that's ever been introduced to your life.
We're going to rule the world.
We're going to talk about survival in the context of horror. But before we go, these are I wandered onto a couple sites, and these were my favorite. These are my favorite survival tips.
Okay.
If a doorway or a container is locked, sealed, or covered with wards and runes, it's that way for a reason. Don't open it.
Good
Whether
point.
you're religious or not, holy symbols of various religions, keep them on your person just in case. Avoid small New England towns in general, always. Don't listen to someone when they say, just try to get some sleep. Stay away from the basement. Don't have sex ever. Karen Black is a wonderful actress, but if you see her, you should flee immediately. If something tells you to get out, for God's sakes, get out. Right. Never split up.
I was going to say, when is that one? Check to make sure you have a full tank of gas.
If you come across somebody who is missing a part of their body, kill him, because he is one of either two things: an evil creature that wants to eat you, or an old man that can only slow you down. Thus, you will be eaten. And finally, hey, here's a videotape that supposedly killed teenagers who watched it. Let's check out that tape and investigate further. Answer: no. Not interested. So
you're gonna have to post that.
I did, and I don't recall the site I got this from, but we will definitely post it and give due credit to the site, because I thought it was a very funny list.
It's an infographic?
And it's not an infographic, but the list goes on and on forever. This list was 93 tips. Obviously, I didn't have time to read 93. That was like 11. I also found another site, which I don't recall the name of the site. They had 327 horror tips. Survival horror tips.
And if you haven't actually read one of the great horror-related novels, The Zombie Survival Guide.
Oh, yeah.
Is a fantastic... I mean, there are some...
That'll help, yeah.
There are some things about, like, one of the things is... get into a 2-story house and take out your staircase so that they can't come up and get you.
Right.
And it's just brilliant, right? But this is all assuming Romero shambling zombies.
Right. Well, and that's the whole thing. Is we were kind of talking about, as we were queuing up the podcast, we talked a little bit about the idea that, all horror films are fundamentally about survival, because the whole reason horror is titillating is because somebody's going to get killed, died, eaten, chopped up. And that's the exciting part. And whether or not you get killed, you die, you get chopped up or eaten, and you survive, that's the survival part. So they are all fundamentally about survival. Right. But taking that concept a little bit further, there's some other elements, and I think you wanted to talk about some of the things that you saw or that ran across your mind as you were contemplating how to survive in a horror film and what really constitutes a survival horror film.
Right. And I think my first reaction was the context that this could happen to you.
Right.
That this is a situation that I could place myself in that element, and how could I get out of this bad situation? And in most of these movies, bad situations get worse, and this becomes a worst case scenario movie. Natural disaster movies tend to play that way. Zombie movies play that way.
Right.
Most single monster stalker monster movies tend to be that way.
And we're not talking about Towering Inferno.
Right. Well, I mean, but the funny thing is, there are some things where there are some movies that are adjacent.
Elements. Yeah, they have horrific elements.
Because death is the likely outcome if you don't do it right. And then there are some things,
but it's not horror.
Yeah, no, it doesn't qualify as horror. But there are some movies that I'll be bringing up that I want something that they're largely grounded in realism. And,
okay.
And so there are some
So you're saying you got to put yourself in the film, and there has to be a certain element of realism. So, leaning less on the supernatural.
I'm leaning less on the supernatural. I'm also removing things where there's an individual monster stalking or an individual stalker, like a serial killer kind of a thing. I don't. They have their own types.
Okay.
But
what about revenge as a part of the survival?
No. Yeah, not necessarily. Okay. I mean, you could. There was
you make it through the knothole. You come out the other side, and you're like, Mother Scratcher, you are going to get yours.
Well, I think the flipping the tables. I think there are some fun. Well, something like I Spit on Your Grave. One of the all-time classic revenge movies, rape revenge movie.
Right.
No doubt a horror movie. But I think it's its own grindhouse, its own sick little corner, similar to, the hillbilly horror and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So I removed those kinds of movies from my equation.
Man, you removed a lot.
I did, because there's still a lot of these movies and a lot but I had some issues when I realized that I'm picking movies that could just be taken from the I Can't Believe I'm Still Alive National Geographic Channel kinds of things.
I think all we're left with at this point is Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers and Beetlejuice.
What was the Slime Ball Bolorama? Sorority Babes and Slime Ball Bolorama.
So, yeah, we're not left with much. You gave us nothing.
I know. No, there's a ton of them.
There are.
And there's some movies like I debated whether something like the movie Alive,
right,
which is the soccer team that crashes in the Andes,
yeah,
and they have to cannibalize each other to survive. Is that a horror movie?
Yeah,
kind of. It's got horrific elements, but But it wasn't pitched. It was pitched as a thriller, and not as a horror movie. And so these. Some of the movies that I'm going to pick.
And in some ways, it's pitched as an inspirational film too,
right.
and fundamentally, horror is not inspirational.
Right. No, these are a lot of the movies that I picked here are downers.
Yeah. Horror is meant to make you feel happy and titillated, and seeing death and tragedy, not seeing death and tragedy and going, ugh. I don't feel very good. That's what watching show is for. You go watch the
Sophie's Choice
9-hour documentary on the Holocaust. Go watch that, and then that's
truly horrific.
Truly horrific.
Not what we're after.
Right. All right.
So with that, I'll lead off with my fourth of my fearsome foursome.
Yes.
Unless you do, or do you have any other?
No.
What are your ground rules that you were?
When you originally pitched this to me, I immediately leapt to the outdoors.
Yep.
That was one of the things I thought about, was sort of like man versus nature. Which isn't particularly horrifying.
Some of them are.
They can be, but it's definitely got a survival quality about it. I mean, and I think that's what most people think about when they think about the term survival. You think about being in wilderness,
right?
Untrammeled by man, having to deal with loneliness and solitude and the vast expanse of wilderness,
right,
all by yourself.
Yeah.
I thought about that, and I have a film maybe kind of touches a little bit on that.
Okay.
I did try to, unlike you, I tried to make sure that maybe there was like some sort of fantastical or supernatural kind of quality that was
Okay.
woven into, like, they're fighting against, so they're not just fighting against nature per se, but they're fighting against nature plus,
Right.
or nature with a twist.
Well, there are a couple of movies that I'm
Nature with a
considering.
twist.
I have a couple of honorable mentions that if we end up getting a collision, I can fall back to.
Right.
But we'll see. I think I'm going to then lead off with very much of
number 4,
Outdoors
on the Fearsome Foursome.
Yeah, and actually, and these are in no particular priority order, mind you. These are just
you're not going 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah,
you're just throwing a bunch of crap at the wall.
All right, if I'm going 4, 3,
stick.
If I'm going 4, 3, 2, 1.
No.
I can. Here's a movie that you and I saw together. A 2012 Eli Roth movie.
Oh.
Aftershock.
Yeah.
So this is your disaster movie. This is Earthquake.
Totally.
This is a group of
breakdown of society.
Yeah, this is 3 young men go to Valparaiso, Chile.
Yes.
To go have a good time. They're vacationing.
I kept thinking it was in Mexico, but that's right. It was in Chile. Yeah.
And they, a country plagued by earthquakes because guess what? They're on the Pacific subduction zone as it hits the South American continental plate. There's a geology lesson for you all today. And if you happen to live in the Pacific Northwest, be aware this is the kind of an earthquake that in the next 200 years is going to hit us.
We're big on subduction zones.
Yeah. And apparently Chile isn't big on building codes.
If the podcast cuts out at some point, it's earthquake.
Yeah. My house has collapsed and Mike and I are buried under a ton of rubble, which is exactly what happens in Aftershock.
That's right. It was a fun movie.
Yeah,
I liked Aftershock.
And I think it has a much more... the earthquake itself is terrifying.
Right.
It is a... whereas movies like The Day After Tomorrow or... Oh God, what's the terrible one that was like Geostorm?
Yeah.
Those kinds of disaster movies, those PG-13 ones look spectacular.
San Andreas Fault.
Yeah, San Andreas, perfect
San Andreas,
one. Dumb, right? And it's not a realistic depiction of an earthquake. It's just like we want to see the city burn down.
There was like a spate of like 3 or 4 like 1990s volcano movies.
Yeah, the Dante's Peak and Volcano.
It's just like one after another.
No, they're a whole different podcast, but Aftershock is one that is a horror movie.
Oh yeah,
and I think that
did Eli Roth direct this, or did he just produce it?
He directed it and he starred in it.
I remember him starring in it. Yeah.
And there's 3 young men who go to Valparaiso to party, and they meet 3 young women, and it's like, hey, it's like we got a good thing going. We're gonna have a night on the town. Earthquake hits. The nightclub that they are in collapses, and then you see these like I-beams coming down and just crushing people. Right. Things that you don't see in Geostorm, where people get swept away, or Twister or something. It's like, ooh, they're gone. No, you see what does it look like to have a wide flange beam drop and land on someone's torso? Right. It's like, it's nasty. And then the power goes out. There's aftershocks, as the movie says.
Yes.
And this is a city on a cliff.
Right.
As most Andean cities are. And it's the group has to rescue their own. Some of them get very hurt in the initial earthquake, and then things go from bad to worse when the local prison population gets cut loose.
And they were all at a discotheque.
Yeah. Right.
And so they are not prepared.
No, they're not. They're
clothing wise.
No, they do not have their climbing rigs with them. And there's a lot of the sentiment of how much do we help out the locals?
Right.
This is like, or are we in it for ourselves? We're separated. We get lost, and then who do you trust?
Yeah.
Very effective in that way. I think as a disaster film goes, it has some real horrifying elements. It has a bit of the the crazy killer rapist element that kind of pushes it a little gonzo over the top, which definitely puts it in the horror realm.
Right. And you have to, I mean, it's Eli Roth. So
yeah.
you gotta have a little bit of that.
And so it's over the top gore.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of going to Latin American countries and partying at the discotheque,
what you got?
My number 4 on the Fearsome Foursome list is the 2008 sort of supernatural horror film, The Ruins.
All right.
Yes. This, of course, involves a group of 2 American couples who are out partying in Mexico. They meet this German dude who's looking for his brother.
Yep.
He was last spotted at some sort of archaeological dig in deep in the jungle at some sort of Mayan temple. And he convinces this group of Americans, we should go out there and look for my brother.
Yeah.
They do. They go to the temple. It turns out the temple was previously used for human sacrifice or something else. And the human sacrifice has worked or not to keep at bay these crazy plant creatures. Right. Speaking of Day of the Triffids,
from episode 31,
this is where Day of the Triffids landed. They landed in Mexico, or they moved from London to Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
They got kicked out. Now they're in Mexico. The plant creatures go crazy on the couple, and it's a super dark film, super nasty film. It's the ultimate in survival because they are stuck. Basically, they are stuck at the very precipice of this temple, and it's either you go into the temple and get eaten by the plant creatures, or you go down the side of the temple,
get shot by the locals with an arrow to the head.
You get shot and chopped up and otherwise villainized. The interesting thing is that. So I read the book as well.
Oh, okay.
And the book is that I like the book. I like the book a lot. In fact, I think I talked about it.
I should do a book review on our podcast.
Yeah, I should do a book review because it's a good book. But the interesting thing is that in the book, the one of the girls escapes the ruins, wanders out into the jungle, sits alone by herself, and then slits her wrists and dies.
Whoa.
Yeah, so very, 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 very dark ending.
Yeah. Now, if I recall correctly, it still has a little bit of a gotcha ending. She gets out, but then it's like, does she have like a glimmer of the curse on her?
Yeah. And apparently the director, a guy named Carter Smith, he said that they had shot a bunch of different endings to see which ones would
not
work.
Unusual for a horror film.
Yeah, to see which one would work, and they went through the testing process with the studios and everything. And he had said that he said that the ending that they ultimately ended up with was the most satisfying, the one you described. But he said, if they would have gone after the one that was in the book, he was like, audiences literally would have just like wanted to kill themselves after they walked out of the theater. And he was like, it was way, because it's a pretty tense film the whole time, because it's just like these people, they're confused, they're lost, they're hungry. They're like they've been exposed to the sun for days and days on end. They're dehydrated and they're stuck in this literal rock and a hard place. They can't go up, they can't go down. They're just stuck.
And once they see what happens to their companions, once the plants start getting into them, literally getting into these poor kids, you want off of it. It's like, I'd be willing to take my chance with the arrows.
It is. It's super grody. It's super gnarly. And I mean, ultimately, we won't say if they survive or not, but yeah, I mean, there's
not all of them do.
Yes, there is the survival element. Very few survivors in this case. So what do you got number 3 on your Fearsome Foursome list?
Well, I'm going to, staying with the South American jungle theme, I'm going with last year's 2017 movie, Jungle.
Oh.
Starring Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah. Well, I haven't seen this.
This is Daniel Radcliffe, and this is a huge step up from him acting.
You're not talking about Jumanji with the Rock, with the Rock and Jack Black.
No,
you're not talking about Jumanji.
No,
you're talking about The Jungle. To be clear,
this is
Jumanji did come out in 2018.
It did, or 2017.
Oh, okay.
This is 1 year ago, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
No, this is it's a beautiful movie, and I recognized the story. And so I kind of went into it knowing some of the permutations of it because it was on one of those "I can't believe I'm still alive" movies. But there's in the 1980s, there's a young man named Yossi who was at grew up in a kibbutz, and then he leaves his folks to become a young adventurer because he didn't want to be a lawyer like his father wanted him to be. And he wants to go follow in the trails of those great South American explorers, and he gets seduced in a thematic way by a German man named Carl, who says, "I can get you to some lost tribes that no one has ever seen, and won't you come with me to the jungle? It's like you and your friends, for $50, I will get you there, and we're going to hack our way through the jungle." And he's got the map, and it's like, "This is where I am," where he comes from, and he gave this great pitch.
And it was already done. It's called The Lost World,
right? But he's full of shit.
Yeah.
Well, or he's mostly full of shit.
Yeah. Carl is,
yeah. And so the Daniel Radcliffe, who plays Yossi, and his buddy Kevin, and his other good friend Marcus, who they met sort of traveling. And for those of you who've done a lot of international traveling, it's one of those classic tales of you meet people going through youth hostels and becoming buddies and sharing experiences, and you all want to do these things together. And they went, "Let's do it. Let's go into the jungle." It's like, let's not be... All the other tourists just sit around in La Paz and that kind of stuff.
Like Aftershock and the Ruins, was there partying involved?
There was some partying
I'm sensing a common theme amongst survival movies.
And
you party first, you lose your faculties,
recreational hallucinogens,
and then you make poor decisions. Let this be a warning, kids.
And you realize in a jungle, it's just like they had maps. They were rough maps.
Yeah.
One of the complaints earlier on was that one of the Kevin, who plays is actually a photographer. There's a National Geographic level quality photographer who goes, "I don't trust these maps.
Yeah.
These are rough." And he goes, "It's all up here, my friends. It's all up here." I'm pointing my head.
Yes.
They and Daniel Radcliffe's character goes, "Come on, you guys! What are you afraid of? This guy knows what he's doing. Listen to him." It's like, and the initial expedition goes just as planned, and then things like one of the guys gets trench foot.
Oh,
and he's getting hobbled, and
horrifying.
And it's like, "Oh, that's nasty." And then all of a sudden, it's like, "All right, well, It's like, now we gotta make a decision. Are we gonna turn back?" It's like, "We can't turn back. We're on an adventure." And it's like, "I can't walk." And so it's like, "Well, let's build a raft." And
piranhas.
No, this is the upper Amazon. This is class 5 rapids that they're running to.
Okay.
Things do not go well. There is the group ends up scattered, and then it becomes an every man for himself kind of a routine, and it's
cannibalism.
I won't say.
Oh,
okay, but this is
all right.
So,
all
but
right.
this is.
I'm in.
It puts you in a situation where you go, "Oh my God, what would I do in this situation?" These people, and then they start losing their mental faculties. They're also subjected to Amazonian parasites.
Is that the hallucinogen part?
No, well, there are some. I think there's some flashbacky kind of things. There's also some flashbacks in storytelling where they all of a sudden go to happier places.
Right.
But they become delirious.
Okay.
There are worms that enter things that shouldn't enter.
Oh.
There is
maybe a urethra or two.
There was a great Vietnam book that I read. There was about the worm that crawls up the urethra.
Yeah.
And it's like, No, that didn't happen, but it's like equally. It was one of those kind of nasty things. It's like, if this really happens, like, oh yuck. Can that really go that fast that quickly?
Answer,
And
yes.
yes.
All right.
So it is now this one.
Partying, cannibals, hallucinogens, piranhas. I'm in.
Okay, I can't promise the cannibals. But there are definite, it is clearly it's a survival story.
Yeah.
And I think that this is, of my selections, this is probably maybe the least horror movie like.
Okay.
It is a great adventure tale. You watch the people just it's like it is a very tense movie.
Which sounds like it's got some horrific qualities.
It does have some horrific qualities to it, and I think that it was a very. I don't know that you say it's enjoyable. None of these kinds of movies typically aren't enjoyable.
All right.
So, anyways, that's my number 3.
I'm going for my number 3. I'm going to a more enjoyable place, 1974, and it literally has the word "survivor" in the title.
Well, I thought you were going to say "Deliverance."
No, I'm talking about the Mexican American sci-fi horror film directed by Sutton Rawley. Chosen Survivors.
Huh, never heard of it.
It's a great film. It's so it's such a great. It's like it just reeks of sort of early 70s kind of sci-fi horror. Just a wonderful film. But it's basically about a group of people that is selected at random by a computer, a supercomputer, to basically seek safety in this underground bomb shelter in the event of a thermonuclear attack. And the group of people sort of are the best and the brightest.
Are you sure this isn't Encino Man?
No. There's the athlete, there's the banker, there's the scientist, there's the starlet, and they're the best and brightest of their class. And they go down, and the government comes out each and every day to tell them that it's still not safe to go to the surface and it may never be safe again to go to the surface because of the nuclear war, and so they're stuck in these bomb shelters forever and ever. Unbeknownst to them, they come upon a horrible realization that this underground bomb shelter lair, they are sharing it with a colony of vampire bats. And since going back up top is not an option, they are forced to fight, kind of like in the ruins. You can't go down into the Mayan temple because the plant monster is going to get you, and you can't go down the side because the villagers are going to get...
Between a bat and a hard place.
You are between a bat and a hard place. The thing that is awesome about the film is it's got all of the end of the world qualities, people fighting against each other, trying to figure out how to survive, even though, relatively speaking, they are in Shangri-La. I mean, this is utopia. They've created this underground utopian society, but even with that, everybody friggin' hates each other. Nice. And they've got vampire bats crawling down their backs, literally and figuratively.
It reminds me, actually, there's a great, I think we talked about this a long time ago in our properties that we want to see turned into books.
Yes.
Or books turned into movies. A book called The Passage, which has some of this kind of there's vampire bats, actually actually more vampire than bat, and underground layers and so on. I mean, it's kind of getting those kind of feels.
Yeah. The thing that's great about it is that as they're trying to deal with the bats, they let loose the fact that this is all part of a government conspiracy. There is no nuclear holocaust. This was really just this massive psychological experiment.
Did the government know about the bats?
The government knew about the bats. The government knew about everything. It was all done. The bats were used as an inject into this psychological experiment.
Cabin in the woods.
To see how people would deal with each other in these tense situations. Government! And to see if such a scenario would actually work so that they could apply the best and the brightest into a underground bomb shelter at some later date when there actually is a thermonuclear war. Go see Chosen Survivors, the 1974 film. It's a great movie, great poster.
Where did you get it in Movie Madness? Did you stream it or?
I bought a copy of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I bought a copy of it once upon a time. You can get it. You can get cheapy DVDs.
Okay.
I got a DVD copy of it with the flip side, the Earth dies screaming.
Nice.
Yeah.
Another end of the world kind of a thing.
A twofer. Go see Chosen Survivors.
Okay.
Because it's got the word survivor in it.
Sure.
And that's the theme of tonight's episode.
Perfect.
Survivor. All right. Number 2 on your fearsome foursome list.
My number 2 is a film that I posted recently on the Scariest Things website. And
Scariestthings.com.
1T.
1T.
2010 movie, Frozen.
Oh yeah,
but not that Frozen.
Not that Frozen.
Not the the animated Disney princess production. Sing
a couple lines from Frozen. It's a couple bars.
Let it go, let it go. All right, that's enough. Simple premise. Right. This is 3 20-something, late teens. They go to a ski resort in New England and they want to get in on the last run of the day, right? But it's actually the last run of the week.
Right.
And it's like, come on, we just one more run up, and they don't have a whole lot of money, and so they were just kind of bamboozling their way to get up the lifts and stuff like that. And so they managed to bribe the lift operators, like, just get us one more time.
And I will tell you, in skateboarding, surfing, snowboarding parlance, uttering those words just one more time is the death knell. that guarantees a fall. That guarantees a crash. That guarantees something horrible will happen when you say, I'm just going to do one more run.
One more run. And the lift operator gets called away from his station for some reason.
Right.
And they end up shutting the resort down as they get halfway up the hill because they did the count wrong. Right. Or they didn't. They say, okay, it's like, I think, everybody's down. They're halfway up the mountain. Lift shuts down. Storm's coming. Mm-hmm. 3 kids sitting in a chairlift in a snowstorm when the resort will be closed for 5 days, and so you get this, and it's got some good actors. It has the woman who played Amy in the first season of The Walking Dead.
Okay.
Let's see, who is it? Belle. Her last name is I forget. Shawn Ashmore, who's ironically Iceman from X-Men film franchise. They're 2 of the primary leads, but they go through the progression as a lot of these survival horror movies go, where at first they just go, all right, well, somebody will come back, right? Somebody, they know we're up here, right? And then darkness hits. And it's like, I'm so cold, and then it's like, my hand's stuck to the pole. Oh no! Or it's like, one of them falls asleep, and her face leans on the pole, and her face sticks to the pole.
You know who they needed? Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. She could just pluck him down.
Can I just get a lift? So then
was episode 31.
Yeah, right.
Episode 31.
Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, a classic. But they and then at a certain point they're getting so cold, and they have to gauge. It's like
cannibalism.
They don't consider cannibalism, but there's like, do I jump?
Right.
And there's 30 feet in the air.
Right.
Right. It's like
you can survive 30 feet.
It's like, yeah. The
nice fluffy snow.
So this isn't it. And that is the gauge. It's sort of like, well, what kind of snow do we have underneath there?
Yeah.
It's like. What is how far am I going to, where am I going to land? Where am I going to go? Mm-hmm. What happens if I can't get up and all this kind of good stuff. But it's nothing looked like imminently deadly.
Right.
But a lot of things where it's like imminent severe injury.
Right. So
And
you have
but the long
gauge all this.
Yeah, and then the longer they wait, the colder they're getting. They're starving out there. They don't have any food.
Right.
And then wolves show up.
Yeah.
And so it's like pressure's on, and it's just this
wolves or werewolves.
Wolves.
Okay.
And this is so my movies don't have the same supernatural tendencies that yours do. But this is the shit just got worse kind of a thing. It's like, well, okay, we're not. It's like after one night on the lift, I can't take it anymore. I can't. There's no way we're going to survive 4 more nights of this. I'm freezing to death.
Right.
And I'm starving.
Right.
And I think I can make it. Or it's like I'm going to try and grab the cable and shuffle along to the next chair, because if I can get to the next chair, then I can rest, and I can get to the next tower and get down, and then I can turn the power on. Right. Things don't go well.
Super plausible.
Yeah. But a lot of this stuff is like, there, but by the grace of God go I.
Right. This is this is what you would do.
Stuck on the goddamn chairlift, and I can't believe I went on that one more time run. So that's, anyways, Frozen. It's super simple plot. They also, I mean, they actually shot it at a ski resort with a custom rig in Utah.
I was going to say in New England. No, you stay out of New England.
That's right. Small towns in New England.
Stay away.
Right. And I think one of the listed items was like, don't take that one more run.
Don't take one more run.
So that's my number 2.
All right. My number 2 is a film that Roger Ebert called a vile bag of garbage. This is a film that is so controversial. It is considered to be one of the worst films ever made. I, of course, am talking about I Spit on Your Grave.
Oh, man, we talked about that.
1978 revenge exploitation horror.
So that's why you were asking about the revenge movie. Yes, okay.
Horror film involves a young woman, Jennifer Hills, who is a Manhattan writer, decides to go on a little writing reprieve up to upstate. I think she goes to upstate New York. I don't think she goes to New England.
No.
Maybe she goes to New England.
It's like Lake Champlain, that area.
Yeah, and she goes to a lakeside cabin, and then a group of 4 men.
Degenerates.
Like
I used a lot in the last episode.
Yes. Super duper degenerates. Rapes her, which is obviously not fun or enjoyable.
And
essentially leaves her for dead. And really the film is very simple, which is kind of what I like about it, because this is a film, I will say, I stayed away from for the longest time because of people like Roger Ebert, who said it's a vile bag of garbage and has no redeeming qualities. And I finally, I'm going to say about 4 years ago, I sat down and watched it, and I'm not going to say it's an enjoyable film, but I think it's actually a super important film in the horror canon. Right. And I think it's really important in the survival canon too, because she really turns the tables in, I think...
She's celebrated in some communities.
Yes.
She is celebrated as a feminist hero.
Right. And she kind of is, because she really turns the tables on these 4 men and goes one by one very selectively and kills each of them in a more brutal way than the last. There's a hanging, there's a castration, there's death by motorboat. Right. She does it all.
Right. Well, and this movie, I think there are 2 movies side by side. Last House on the Left,
right,
and I Spit on Your Grave.
Yeah, I would kind of put them right in the same pocket, although they're very different films. Yes, really, at the end of the day, and they I think they ultimately convey 2 different two different classes of like fictionalized character. Right. I mean, this is really sort of the ultimate kind of anti-hero hero. Right. But it, for a film to have that kind of lasting power, and for a film, even for me, the most grizzled horror fan, to like stay away from for that long. I mean, stay away from it for like 3 decades, basically, and like actually come back to it and watch it. I think that's got pretty powerful provenance. But as a survival film, I mean,
this was, I think, also
coming back from this,
the poster child for how far can we push the bounds of the new rating system?
Right.
Did this receive an X rating? Was this an X rated movie?
I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was because I think at that point,
it hadn't been associated with porn yet because it was like 72. Right?
No. This was 1978.
Okay,
This is
Last House on the Left was 72.
Yeah.
So
I Spit on Your Grave was 1978.
Okay.
Originally titled Day of the Woman.
Right.
Which is not quite as provocative as I Spit on Your Grave.
Right.
I think I Spit on Your Grave tells a much more clear story.
Right. Well, here's for a retelling of this to some degree. There is a new movie out called Revenge, which has gotten a lot of rave reviews. It was playing at Overlook. It's a very stylish film. It's another rape revenge movie. I don't normally don't have the stomach for that.
Yeah,
but it's
pretty gnarly. But yeah, I mean, if the tables can be turned, it does provide for kind of an interesting cat and mouse chase survival story. I mean, what's funny is like if you compare this to Last House on the Left, or even They Call Her Left Eye. Now, I mean, we're wandering way down into the Grindhouse, the Grindhouse era. I don't think this is as gnarly as They Call Her Left Eye at all. Like that film is insanely gnarly,
right? Well,
like, super duper gnarly, and this one is really gnarly.
Yeah, I think this. When I created the Scariest Things horror meter,
yes,
I Spit on Your Grave is very, very high on the squeamish list.
I think
it's like a 27, 28. It's like there's only like maybe one or two steps above this.
Right,
and I have avoided this movie just because I don't know that emotionally I can handle it.
Now, I've not seen the remake. I did not see the remake, so I don't know about the remake. But
I've heard that it's on par with the original, which is again disturbing and vile.
Right.
But but you do get the satisfaction of the revenge.
Yeah, I don't know that I need to see the same story told again, just in brighter,
Gus Van Sant and
4K,
Psycho.
yes, 4K colors.
Right.
But yeah, I think I Spit on Your Grave is a pretty solid film, and I think it's right in the pocket for a survival film. So what do you got for number one on your Fearsome Foursome list?
Well, I had to go with the mother of all survival horror type films, and that is Shark Monster. Sharks as monsters.
Shark Monster.
Shark.
No,
not Sharktopus. There have been, and not Jaws, because I do not consider Jaws a survival horror movie. That's a Captain Ahab versus the Great Whale. It is a monster to be dealt with.
Yeah, it's Herman Melville-esque.
Right. Though there is certainly death is the result of poor planning kind of thing. And Jaws kills a bunch of guys. Yes. This is, so I had my pick between The Shallows, The Reef, and the one that I eventually selected of the three, Open Water.
Yeah. Open Water's great.
Open Water had me, it's a sad movie.
Oh, super sad.
But
don't spoil it for folks.
Well, I mean, it's not to put too fine a point on it.
There's not much surviving going on. But I thought people were supposed to survive in these survival films.
Some of them do, some of them don't. I've got a pretty iffy survival ratio on my films. Open Water is a close retelling of an actual story of two American tourists who went out and were left behind in at the Great Barrier Reef. The dive shop didn't realize that
it's almost kind of like a Dateline NBC.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, but this is you spend your time with these two people who are they're apart from being abnormally pretty people, also happen. But they're not
believably pretty.
Yes, right. They don't look like models necessarily, but they get, because I think if you were like spectacularly pretty, people on the boat would have remembered. It's like, hey, where's that where's that hot couple?
Right.
Why aren't they back on the boat? They get left behind, and with out of view of land. And they, at first they're bewildered. They go, well, the boat that they'll just come back to it's one of those boats out in the distance. When those other boats vamoose, then they're by themselves.
Right.
and they took
With sharks.
sharks. And there are some things like the jellyfish are scary.
Yeah.
And then you realize it's like at nighttime. It's like and point of reference. My father's a fisheries biologist.
Yes.
And so I have a working knowledge of aquatic sea life. And I love snorkeling, and so the sensation of the initial
your
parts
dad
of the
has
movie,
never studied a shark.
No, a shark. Yeah, killer crocta sharknado. They they don't make terrible decisions. They make some decisions that they it's like, well, should they have tried to swim for it?
All the decisions are on point.
Yeah,
like every single one is on point and totally believable.
And
like given the it's like they really sussed out like psychologically where would you be at 4 hours, where would you be at 10 hours, where would you be at a day,
and then so that not only is it like that there's sharks in the water, but they handle the sharks in a reasonably realistic way.
Totally.
And
given what they have to work with,
and the all the more real because they were real sharks, and they put actors in the water with real sharks. And apparently the Blanchard Ryan, the woman, actually got nipped on by a barracuda during the shooting.
She got sharked.
She got, and so she got tagged by a bitey fish. Barracuda, and she, but the other things that they would show is like there's triggerfish that would come up and start bumping against and chewing on the little, gnawing on her wound, and I was like, oh no, I don't do that, and and you just like it's like exhaustion, dehydration, drowning, starvation. And just being lost at sea, getting caught in a storm, everything that could possibly go wrong goes wrong. Yeah, and you'll have to watch for it's a poignant ending.
Oh yeah, I watched which I recommend after you watch the film as part of the DVD extras. They had sort of the making of Open Water, and basically they all lived up in New York. And they would so that it was a husband and wife filmmaker, and they would fly down to Florida like once a month and shoot little snippets. And they were both the husband and wife, if I remember correctly. They were accomplished divers, so they had all the dive gear crap and everything, but they didn't have like the locale, and so they would just do it like once a month. Go shoot a couple hours, come back. Go shoot it, and so it helped them because it is a low budget film, but it really
super low budget, Hall of Fame low budget.
Yeah, it really helped them like keep the cost down for the whole thing, even though they were flying to and fro.
I think it cost them $112,000.
Yeah,
all told. And
and most of that was in travel costs to and fro.
No, actually, most of the cost was for the shark wranglers.
Oh, shark wranglers, yeah.
But it made $35 million.
Yeah,
right. So
it's a good film.
A tidy profit. And it was I will admit I just saw this over the past week because it's a movie that I was going to say. Because I think it makes me really nervous because I am a avid snorkeler and and I know what Jaws did to me. It made me fear.
Right.
Deep. If I don't like swimming in water where I can't see the bottom.
Yeah.
And I blame Jaws for that.
And that's this whole film.
Yeah,
100%.
And
cannot see the bottom.
But there were parts where they would put on their mask. It's like, I'm just going to take a look. It's like, oh, it hurts. It's like, let me take a look. And then you go, what is she going to see?
Right.
When she looks in the water, and then sometimes it's like, coast is clear. And sometimes it's like, coast is definitely not clear. And you go, oh wow. And they're not great white sharks. They're Caribbean reef sharks, which are about the size of a human.
Right.
Which is big enough. Right. And especially when there's hundreds
big enough and hungry enough.
That's my number one.
All right.
Your number one.
My number one is I gotta give a shout out to my man Ty West. This of course is one of his first films, a film called Trigger Man. This is a really cool film that apparently was like, I guess was, if I remember correctly in the interview I saw with him, was basically shot in his backyard. He grew up in kind of a sort of a wooded area in Delaware, and this was like this old sort of abandoned industrial area right near his house that he used to always like play around in with his buddies and everything. It was like let's go out into the woods and go roam around and play. And it was like apparently it was it was an idea that had always stuck with him, and essentially it involves three friends from Miami I have Miami on the brain, from Manhattan, who decide to go hunting in rural Delaware, and they are stalked by a faceless, maskless person who is hunting them.
I almost did The Most Dangerous Game. Which is the original Man Hunting Man movie.
Right.
But this is like this. So this goes into the same family of surviving the game: Hard Target, Predator, Southern Comfort.
Yeah.
It's like,
although what the interesting twist with this is, and it's not necessarily a spoiler. Spoiler is whether or not they survive, which I'm not going to disclose. The interesting thing with this is you never ever see the person hunting them, so it really takes on more of like a Spielbergian quality in the duel, right? Like you never see the truck driver. In this case, you never.
But do you ever get from his perspective?
Yeah, you do get from his perspective.
The hunter's eye.
Yeah, but you never see him, and you have no idea what his motivation is for killing them. And ultimately, they get out of the woods and move into sort of the abandoned industrial area, which is great because and I'm sure it was done on the super cheap.
Yeah, Ty West is a master of taking a minuscule budget,
if not for free. I mean, I have a feeling it was probably done as a guerrilla kind of guerrilla quality. But yeah, so it's basically this guy who's a sharpshooter who's picking them off one by one, and as they start getting shot at, these guys from New York City, who otherwise are not probably skilled hunters or outdoorsmen, start freaking out in a major way. And I mean, much like a lot of these films we talked about, it's sort of like your response to the inject, your response to the environment, your response to these nameless, faceless creatures. Like, what do you do? How do you react? And in this case, these guys freak their shit out. They do not keep it together at all. And that in and of itself is
they turn on each other.
There's some bickering, but they don't.
That's a classic thing, though. Or a subtrope within the trope.
Yeah, is turning on each other. Yeah.
And actually, that was one of the things in Open Water that I really appreciated was that for the initially you see them go through all the various levels of acceptance and blame and grief and but there are parts where they start bickering and they have to just get at each other because I can't believe we're in this.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that happens in the Ruins, that happens in Frozen, it happens in all of these movies where at some point the group is pressured to, it's like, and that makes the group dynamic that special little element.
The other thing that's amazing about the film is that Ty West, he wrote it, he directed it, he shot it, and he edited it.
Wow.
Yeah, the only thing he didn't do
was this before House of the Devil?
Oh yeah, way before House of the Devil. In fact, I think this is his first movie. So good, and in fact, the only thing he didn't do was the soundtrack, and I don't remember that. I had the name of the guy who did the soundtrack. Soundtrack is super spooky.
Do you think that Ty West is ever going to that someone is going to give him a big budget, or whether he wants to do a big budget movie?
That's a good question.
I would love to be able to get an interview with Ty West just to ask him.
Ty West, if you're listening, we would love to have you on the podcast because we have a multitude of
tons of questions for you. Yeah,
tons of questions.
I saw another film at Overlook that resembles what you're describing in Trigger Man. A film called Downrange. Ryuhei Kitamura, who's sort of another horror savant. But this is it takes in this day and age. The active shooter trope is very scary because that is whether it's Las Vegas or the small town in Texas or wherever in the U.S. particularly that you don't fear a guy with a hatchet
Right.
so much as you fear that someone's just going to turn on you with a high-powered rifle just for
Right.
kicks.
You fear the active shooter. Yeah.
And that Kilmore did it's a fun film.
Or worse yet, we don't fear it as a society because we're becoming so desensitized to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but when I was watching that movie, and it actually Kilmore was good enough to he was at the screening, and so I asked him, it's like, how do you put in perspective the current events?
Right.
And he dodged it. He just it's like, oh no, mine's completely different. And I was like, okay, all right, man. I said, but I hope you know that you just
whatever it takes to get you through the day.
I'm just drawing the equation that you had with your guy and Jason Voorhees, right? Because it was that he's replaced the guy with a hatchet with the guy with a high powered rifle and a scope, and pinning down a bunch of travelers on a remote road in the mountains.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a very compelling movie. I think that the end, it has a few too many endings.
Yeah.
But I think if you liked Triggerman, you'd probably like Downrange.
Okay.
Which is playing for free on Shudder.
Oh, cool.
Got Shudder.
Awesome. All right, let's go down our fearsome foursome list in no rank order, as we made very clear from the top, not in rank order.
Although I actually sort of respun.
Oh, did you?
I respun it to go to the rank order.
Give me number 4.
Aftershock. Eli Roth, 2012.
All right, my number 4 on the fearsome foursome list is 2008's The Ruins.
My number 3 is Jungle, directed by Greg McLean.
My number 3 is Chosen Survivors, 1974, directed by Sutton Rowley.
My number 2 is Frozen from 2010, and I forgot to write down the director's name.
All right. My number 2 is The Day of the Woman, the 1978 classic.
Better known as
I Spit on Your Grave.
Rough movie.
Directed, produced, and edited by Mir Zarchai.
Interesting.
Mir Zarchai.
So he never had, because Last House on the Left was Wes Craven.
Yeah,
that was his first movie.
Yeah.
And so where his career went through the roof.
Yeah, this guy. I don't know what else he did. We'll have to get back to you on that one.
My number 1 is 2004's Open Water, directed by Chris Kentis, who actually also played one of the divers in the water. Both he and his wife were I think they were the two who got pulled out where the switcheroo, the confusion happened.
Oh, right. Yeah, and my number 1, of course, we just talked about is Ty West's The Triggerman.
I got to see that one.
That
good. Sounds great.
All right, let's get to grave digging.
Okay.
What do you got for us tonight?
Well,
what are we digging?
So you guys have probably heard me talking, and actually both Mike and I talking about the Portland Horror Film Festival, which happened last month. And prior to that, the Overlook Film Festival. And I wanted to let you guys know that there is another horror festival that is going to be next month, the Popcorn Frights Film Festival in Tampa, Florida.
Yeah.
And they've got a great roster of movies.
Are we going? You got us tickets, right? We're going.
The problem
we'll be there.
The price is right. And it's a 7-day festival for only $99.
That's
sweet. Which is an insane and
Florida in August. Sign me up.
August 10th to August 16th in Tampa. But here are the films, and you can check some the ones that we have that I've seen here. Saint Agatha, a great movie.
Check.
Framed, a great movie. Puppet Master, The Littlest Reich.
Check.
A great movie. The Farm, a gross movie.
Gross.
Check. The Ranger, which showed at Portland Horror Film Festival. Cold Skin, a Lovecraftian fish beastie thing.
Yep. Check.
So a movie that I think sounds like a whole lot of fun called Anna and the Apocalypse, which is a horror movie musical. I kind of dig that. Some of you guys might.
We saw Evil Dead the musical. We could stomach horror musicals.
That was horrible, but it was at the same time it was horrible and great. They sprayed us with blood
and very endearing.
There's a movie, actually a movie that I haven't seen, Anna and the Apocalypse. So these next 4 movies I haven't seen, and if those of you who live in Tampa or in the Florida area, I implore you to go and let us know how Tigers Are Not Afraid is. It's a Mexican horror movie that I've heard is like Guillermo del Toro meets City of God.
Yeah.
So very, very interesting movie. The Summer of '84, which is capitalizing on Stranger Things.
Yep.
In a very retro, teenage boys pick out a local cop who they think is a serial killer.
Ooh, interesting.
And
that sounds good.
A movie called What Keeps You Alive, which reconstitutes the director-actress team that gave one of my favorite movies from last year called It Stains the Sands Red. It's coming back, and it's a young lesbian couple who are celebrating their first year anniversary together, and one of them isn't quite right in the head and has been holding some deadly secrets.
Ooh.
So I did a post for this recently on the...
Lots of good stuff.
There's a lot of good... And so the first ones that I ran off to you, with those first 6 movies alone, is worth twice that $99 thing, because you're not going to be able to catch most of these movies on the big screen.
Right.
They're going to go streaming video, or, I think I'm waiting to hear when St. Agatha's going to get an actual release, but it's not available anyway.
Go to Tampa.
Unless you go on the film circuit. Now, those are just, I think there's twice as many movies as what I just listed.
Right.
Plus short films.
Yep.
I think we've been treated so well by our friends at the film festivals that I am becoming a huge proponent for horror fans to go to these things and check it out. Best in indie horror.
Yeah, absolutely. Just binge, and binge.
Michael.
Speaking of binging, my grave digging unearthed a little film from 2015 called The Invitation.
Oh, yeah.
Which totally escaped me. I didn't hear of it, wasn't aware of it, knew nothing about it, hadn't read a single review, and I was just wandering around the internet last week. I wandered into it. I thought, I'll give it a go. And it is the ultimate film in this. It's sort of a survival film, so it's kind of keeping in theme with what we were talking about, but it's the ultimate in, this isn't really right. This doesn't seem right. This doesn't feel right. Something is really wrong. Over and over and over. That's like the whole film is.
How long does it take you to piece the puzzle together? Does it hit you at the very end?
You know what? I'm a dummy about those kind of things, so it really hit me in a big way at the end. I will say it takes you about 80% of the way through the film for the big reveal, the explosion, and it does happen. I mean, there is a very climactic scene about 80% of the way through where they like lay it all out for you, and you go, "Oh, okay, that makes sense."
Sure.
But then there is a much deeper and darker piece at the end of the film where you go, oh, which is kind of a gut punch. I argued that it was almost kind of hopeful as well. I might have to recalibrate that thinking.
You gave it a 4-star rating, I think.
I gave it a 3.5. I would almost go 4. I would almost go 4.25. I would almost go 4.5.
You should bump that. Give him some love.
I think I lowballed it a little bit. I might go back and readjust that rating because it is a good film. The Invitation, super duper solid.
Any actors we know?
I didn't know any of the actors. The two lead actors, the gentleman Will and his girlfriend, whose name escapes me, they were really great. And in fact, all the characters are really great and really kind of like coming full circle on this whole survival thing. Is it believable? Would you put yourself in this situation? Have you ever been to a dinner party like this? I mean, maybe not quite like this, because it was a little extravagant. These are obviously very wealthy Los Angelinos, but I mean, a lot of the pieces and parts were familiar and resonated, and it's a good film. Go see The Invitation. All right, I'm going to take us out with a wonderful little tagline from 1986. From a film called Night of the Creeps. The good news is your dates are here. The bad news is they are dead.